On April 25th, federal airport screeners will no longer force you to surrender hockey sticks, golf clubs, toy baseball bats, or pocket knives, as long as the blades don't lock in place and aren't too long. Under the policy, a knife with blades no longer than 2.36 inches and less than half an inch wide will be allowed in airline cabins as long as the blade does not lock in place and is retractable. Razor blades and box cutters are not allowed. The Transportation Security Administration justifies these unsafe and irrational new restrictions by claiming that it is beneficial for safety, that the upcoming change in TSA's prohibited items list is part of the agency's new risk-based security approach designed to allow TSA officers to better focus their attention to finding the higher threat items, such as explosives and explosive components, to prevent a catastrophic incident from taking place. Many have objected to these illogical new rules, referencing 9/11, long airport lines, or simply common sense. Based on these unsafe and inefficient new rules, the Transportation Security Administration plan to put in effect, be it resolved, the TSA will reverse the decision allowing small knives and other objects previously deemed as threats on the commercial airlines. Airlines, pilots, politicians, flight attendants, and the general public are all against this absurd law. According to a poll conducted by the Dayton Business Journal, it indicates an overwhelming majority of people believe the new Transportation Security Administration rules allowing knives, golf clubs, and more objects once deemed as weapons on planes are wrong. Both New York Senator Charles Schumer and Representative Ed Markey from Massachusetts issued strong statements calling for the change. Schumer held up a blade and declared that they were still dangerous on an aircraft. It seems that the TSA is taking a step backwards from protecting passengers from harm. A TSA spokesman once said the policy change was based on a recommendation from an internal TSA working group and found these items presented no real danger, and that gun-carrying pilots, federal air marshals, and airline crew members trained in self-defense provide security against the items. Apparently, the TSA has decided that what was once deemed as dangerous is now safe, assuring the public that it is extremely low likelihood pocket knives could be used by terrorists to bring down an airliner. Is it extremely low likelihood that someone could take down a plane using a small knife? Maybe. Is it possible? Of course. For relatives of people who died on one of those flights on 9/11, this has to be both shocking and disheartening news. After all, just because a knife does not lock in place does not mean it cannot be used to make a slice across someone's throat. All one have to do is support the knife with with their thumb. After word of this change got out, more people came forward to voice their displeasure. Flight attendant Vita Shook says that she can't believe knives will be allowed back on planes after lessons learned on 9/11. Quote, it just doesn't make any sense. We've been fine without knives on boards for a decade now, and to reintroduce knives on board an airplane makes zero sense. Another Ray wrote, why would anyone need any of these things aboard a flight? On September 11, 2001, terrorists managed to take control of airplanes by simply using box cutter knives. Box cutters are usually even smaller than 2.36 inches. AFGE President J. David Cox Sr. states that any knife, regardless of blade size, can be used as a weapon. I've come to hate airports. The lengthy lines in between checkpoints can really take up a long period of time and just brings frustration to me at times. The TSA claims that the new rules will allow for more time to check for explosives and allowing for quicker checkpoints. Apparently, it is easier to make sure a knife is no longer than 2.36 inches, less than half an inch wide, making sure the blade does not lock in place, has hand grooves, that a bat is not too long, and that no more than 2 golf clubs are carried by each person. Senator Charles Schumer puts it in words perfectly. Quote, in addition, the additional responsibility of assessing which knives meet the new requirements could be a distraction for already overburdened screeners at TSA checkpoints, potentially leading to an increased wait time and decreased security. Travelers already complain about how long it takes to go through these lines when TSA officials have long laminated the lack of screeners to handle the job. These new rules could not come at any worse time. There are severe budget cuts already for the TSA. TSA hires will not be coming anytime soon, and those doing the job will now be pushed to the breaking point. Instead of simply confiscating any knives found, he or she will now go through the list of rules, making sure it meets regulations. Airport lines will now become even worse, something that will affect you, me, or anyone else planning on flying. Forgetting about the increased wait times for people in airports, forgetting about the disheartened family members of 9/11, disregarding what the airlines and flight attendants have to say themselves, security should be the first priority. Would knives on board planes make you feel safer? A U.S. Representative, Edward Markey, blatantly puts it, there is no reasons to have knives on planes. Be it resolved, the TSA will reverse the decision allowing small knives and other objects previously deemed as threats onto commercial airlines.
Recently, the TSA made the decision that for the first time since September 11, 2001, small knives and some previously restricted sporting goods would be allowed back on planes. The affirmative side would see it resolved that the TSA reversed their decision to allow these objects on commercial aircraft, and that the new policy would never see its implementation on the 25th of April. The terrorist attack on the World Trade Center was one that shook the nation and has deeply affected us all. But we cannot hold on to the very fear that the attackers hoped to instill in all of us. We cannot hold on to the ineffectual policies rushed into usage in the wake of a tragedy. We must remain vigilant, but not to the point of absurdity. As John Pistol, head of the TSA, said, a small pocket knife is simply not going to result in the catastrophic failure of an aircraft, and an improvised explosive device will. Since 2001, many new security measures have made knives largely ineffectual as tools for hijackers. Hardened cockpits, crew with self-defense training, and sky marshals make these attempts much less likely to succeed and have overall made a pocket knife no more dangerous in the sky than it is on the ground. Perhaps the most important thing to consider is that this decision may increase safety. John Pistol stated that, we know from internal covert testing, searching for these items which will not blow up an aircraft can distract our officers from focusing on the components of an improvised explosive device. In this day and age, knives are simply not the most major threat to airplanes. It is undeniable that small explosives made with no metallic components are by far the most obvious threat to an aircraft. The process of searching for the approximate 2,000 knives that the TSA confiscates daily consumes time and, based on internal testing, has been shown to actually hinder the discovery of bombs by airport employees. A small knife without a locking blade is not a weapon. It is a tool, and a fairly benign one at that. The addition of many security measures on planes, such as sky marshals and hardened cockpits, have virtually removed the possibility of hijacking a plane with a small knife. This has stripped these small tools of the only power they could possibly have, as without control of the plane, these knives are only as dangerous as they are on the ground. Tell me, when was the last time you heard of a robbery committed with a penknife? Improvised explosives, on the other hand, are a looming threat. Improvised explosives are fairly easily made and readily concealable. An IED can easily take out key systems in a building or aircraft, easily shattering key structural components and machines responsible for ventilation or power. The Department of Home Security lists the immediate damage to a human being from an IED as overpressure damage to ears and lungs, damage to the body from shrapnel sent flying at high speeds from the blast, impact damage caused from the sheer force of the detonation throwing a person, and burns resulting from the high energy released in the explosion. One easily concealable package can cause all of these effects, coupled with the confusion and fear surviving passengers would feel. The damage is devastating to the point where it can no longer be compared to a small pocket knife. If these weapons are so easily available and are easier to take onto a plane as they contain no metallic parts, why would any hijacker even attempt to use a knife? Furthermore, if allowing citizens to take their pocket knives onto planes has been tested and proven to make the detection of these bombs easier, why wouldn't we make the rational choice to allow these small blades? Without a doubt, the most prominent aircraft hijacking ever to occur was the attack on September 11, 2001. While this tragedy still weighs on our minds, it is important not to let it cloud them. Immediately after the attacks, politicians scrambled to make changes that would prevent such a tragedy from repeating itself. While safety measures are important, it is not rational to make sweeping and heavy-handed policies, especially when the dangerous objects you are chasing have largely been eclipsed by a much more deadly threat. We need to worry about the threats of today, not those of yesterday. It is time to tailor our policies to current threats rather than our fears from before. Along with knives come several other items now allowed on planes. The TSA will allow items like novelty baseball bats, wiffle ball bats, and billiard cues on an aircraft in a carry-on bag. These items are simply sporting goods and toys, not weapons capable of bringing a flight crew to their knees. Can you imagine a terrorist boarding a plane and beating the crew into submission with a wiffle ball bat or billiard cue? The idea is absurd, comical even. These things are only a danger in our minds, only a danger as long as we live in fear of another attack. There are very real, tangible threats to our safety, and the more resources that are wasted on keeping lacrosse sticks out of the skies, the less we can put towards real issues. The new policy put into place is not a radical change that will endanger lives, but a revision based on changing times and new threats. The new policy is meant to give passengers the greatest amount of safety, the greatest amount of liberty, and the greatest amount of convenience that can be afforded at this time. There is no place for stale and outdated methods in ensuring the safety of all who choose to fly. Looking forward to address the real threats and ease off those that are no longer a danger to us is not reckless, it is progress.